noticed a lack of more minorities not visiting museums. So I started the blog, and everyone loved it, and they thought it was great. But then after a few years, I was like, okay, I need to do something more. So I decided a magazine would be great because there is no magazine dedicated to these institutions. There is no way for them to have, mass marketing, mass way of people knowing about their different institutions. So after a lot of thought and prayer, I decided to publish the magazine, and what you've shown everyone is the preview issue, and the first full issue will be available late this fall in October.
All right. So you started out with a blog, you said?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the name of your blog?
It was Heritage Salon.
Okay. So if we go on your website, can we go back and see the early startings of the Heritage Salon magazine?
You cannot, because I kind of reinvented the website and everything and transitioned it to the, electronic, the website and the magazine. But what you can do is there is an area called a drawing room. And I decided to keep this from the blog because this was an opportunity for people to learn about different museum professionals. And I'm excited because upcoming I have 2 young professionals who's doing some great research in diversity and also some research in African Americans and collecting, and they're going to get updated soon. So people can still go to the website and learn about museum professionals. They can also read the magazine on the website and other, opportunities for people just to learn more about the institution.
Awesome. So the first issue, which we have here in front of us, talks about the African American Museum's financial and programmatic sustainability. That's a lot. Tell me what that means, Jada.
What that means is I decided in the first issue to write about this topic of African American museums and being financially and programmatically sustainable. I just attended the Association of African American Museums conference where that was the theme, the business of museums and sustainability. And a lot of the African American institutions are trying to sustain themselves and come up with, unique and different ways of providing quality programming and something that is engaging people in order to sustain themselves. Another way, of course, is financial stability, a way to have an ongoing financial, support of their programs and their operations. So that article really talked a little bit about ways that they could sustain themselves, and really was an opportunity for individuals to go to the conference and learn about, different ways that they can sustain themselves through financial ways and programmatic ways.
Great. That sounds great. And we know that sustainability is a very important term in the museum world as well as the business world. If you're not sustainable, you won't be here for the future. And while the African American museums talk a lot about the past, we need them to be there in the future. Tell me a little bit about the conference that you attended, the Association of African American Museums. Do you know how many museums are a part of that conference?
I don't know how many museums are part of that conference. If I had to estimate, I'm sure there are quite a bit of institutions that are part of it. The conference is really a great opportunity for museums to come, especially your small to mid-sized museums. The large museums attend as well. But they give an opportunity for individuals to connect and network and to learn about different ways, according to the theme. And this year's theme was, of course, sustainability. And I actually presented at the conference about Heritage Salon, the magazine, and ways to engage, because that's one of my strong platforms is ways to engage the community, ways to engage more individuals in your museum. So the conference really was great because it was an opportunity to network. I met a lot of people from the museum world when I sent out, the magazine to all the museum directors. Ran into some old acquaintances from college and potential board members. actually met one of my professors from my second master's degree I'm working on. So it's always been a great opportunity for museums to network and to also develop those relationships with individuals that can help them as they, are moving along with their operation.
That sounds great. Tell me a little bit about your education, how you came to be a writer.
Well, I received my undergraduate degree from Bethune-Cookman University. I have to catch myself because it was Bethune-Cookman College when I went.
Okay.
And I studied political science and started writing then. I actually left Bethune-Cookman, and that's really where I credit a lot of my foundation in the love for museums, because that was my first opportunity that I really spent time at a historical house museum. But I did a lot of writing there, and I ventured off to Michigan and went to law school for 3 semesters and decided I didn't want to, continue this path, and I did writing there as well. And then decided to get my master's in urban and regional planning from Michigan State University. So I did quite a bit of writing with that as well, and my master's is in urban planning, and I have a certificate in museum studies. So I've always went on this track of different degrees that, required me to do quite a bit of writing. And now I'm actually working on my second master's degree in museum studies at Johns Hopkins. I'm doing the online program, and that requires quite a bit of writing as well. So I believe the creative writing that I developed out of the blog, sometimes when you know what your passion is, it kind of flows out, because I never thought I would be, writing stories or be this creative writing, because I wasn't taught to write that way. I was taught more technical. But because this is my passion, it tends to flow. And I have become this creative writer, and I tell people I feel like I tell stories. And I'm very cautious about things that I do put in the magazine, because I want the magazine to be something that's interesting and to grab people's attention. This is an opportunity for people to learn about the museums that they don't know about. So that writing is so key, and I actually have a copy editor who reads over it. I have my husband who reads over it, because I want to be sure that I'm, on target, grammatically, but also I use my husband because he's not in the museum field and get his opinion. So that creative writing and that writing came out of, the background of writing, but as it flowed and as it came in the passion.
So writing is really in your spirit.
It is.
That is great. You mentioned something about house museums. Tell me or explain to our audience, what is a house museum?
A house museum is typically a historical home that's been preserved over time, and they typically conduct tours, of course, being a museum. And at Bethune-Cookman, there was a house museum, actually the home that Dr. Bethune, Mary McLeod Bethune, lived in while, she was alive. She had another home in Washington, D.C., which is actually the National Council of Negro Women's original home. But the home in Daytona Beach, Florida, at Bethune-Cookman was her personal home, where a lot of her personal effects, and where I spent a lot of time. The museum, the Historical House Museum, has always been near and dear to me, because I feel like the Historical House Museum gives someone the opportunity to see a personal side of someone. I visited the Frederick Douglass home a few times in Washington, D.C., and we read about Frederick Douglass and all of his great writings and, books and all these great things, but you get to walk into his place, his home, where, he rested, in the living room, where he had guests, where he slept. And you have a different type of connection when you walk in a historical house museum. So those historical houses give us an opportunity to connect with someone, and also an opportunity to view artifacts and sometimes art, but gives you opportunity to connect with that person.
Would you say that many of the African American, museums started as house museums?
Yes. A lot of museums started out of homes. And sometimes historical houses, they don't necessarily characterize themselves as museums, because when we typically hear the word museum, we think automatically, and this is stereotypical in the African American community, of boring or, art museum or not interesting. But a house museum, it is still a museum, because you are still walking through, you are still viewing things, there are things on display, and it's typically free and open to the public. Some of them are not. But there are quite a few museums that started out of individuals' homes. I'm almost certain, and I may be wrong, but I believe Dr. Margaret Burroughs, who's considered the mother of the Black Museum movement, she started the Disabled Museum in Chicago. I'm certain that some of her things started out of her home.
Yes.
Dr. Charles Wright, the Wright Museum in Detroit, Michigan, I believe it started in a home. So a lot of, and Dr. Wright and Dr. Burroughs were really the founders of the Association of African American Museums conference and this association, that African Americans gather. But most of them are, because we tend to, our grandmothers, I know I do, but my generation is different, but your grandmother, your mother, great-grandmother, they tend to hold and keep things. And that's typically how people start a museum and do collecting, is keeping older programs and magazines and documents and fans. Those things are things that are used in a museum. They're on display in a museum. So a lot of times it starts, out of a home.
Okay. And I think that is an interesting point, that most of the museums started in homes. And I have visited the DuSable Museum, and yes, you are correct. Dr. Burroughs did start in her home, and then it has spread abroad, and now it has almost taken over Washington Park in Chicago.
Yes.
And I think that is important, that we understand, while we tend to think of a museum, as you said, as boring, as a great big building, but there are some very intimate things that you learn in a house museum. And there's some very intimate things that you learn in that setting. And so that says to me, you mentioned about people being collectors of things, that people should not be so eager to what I call trash, what they don't deem important.
Right. It's funny you say that. I try to keep a lot of things. We just moved from Houston from Detroit, so we got rid of a lot of things, but books and documents and papers I always keep. And my husband's in seminary school, so we actually have a ton of books, because I typically didn't sell my books back, especially when I got to graduate school and college. I kept a lot of my books, which are invaluable as time goes on. Actually, right now, with my church, we're celebrating our 113-year anniversary, and I'm now working on putting some things together. We're doing an exhibition and trying to locate things. And we're also getting ready, and hopefully we will be able to get a call from our members, because a lot of times people have things at their home that they may or may not think are important, but they actually are. It's kind of the same thing with what's going on now, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. But with the Smithsonian National Museum, they're soliciting the hoodie from Trayvon Martin, from the evidence, of his hoodie to put on display at the museum. Who would have thought, that hoodie, they have expressed interest. I'm not for sure where it is as far as them getting it, but this is something that may be on display, and I'm sure when he purchased it or his parents purchased it or whoever purchased it, they never thought, of course, not anything would happen to him, but this could be possibly at a museum on display. So things that have historical, that we don't think are very important, typically can be very important. Even the fashion, if you look now at the fashion these days, it's a big circle, from the 80s and 90s, and things are coming back now. So I tell people, keep those old magazines and documents and books and all type of things, because you don't know, what you're preserving for a future generation.
That's right. And even though we have this digital age, the things that you can touch, magazines, books, pictures, are very, very important. And so we as a people do not need to let that go, because that's how our history slips away.
Right, right. And that's why I continue to have electronic and print. I don't believe print is dead, and a large part of our audience that visit museums may not have access to an iPad or a smartphone or or a computer to be able to look at the magazine electronically. So I feel like print is not dead, and we should continue to print magazines. That's why I am now, on the course of soliciting funds to get more than one copy at each museum so patrons can come in and take, copies with them. Because it's nothing like holding something in your hand. We still go, when you travel and go on the airport, there are magazine stands everywhere, and people are reading magazines. They're still on the plane, in the seat, there's still magazines there, because you can't, use your laptop and computer to entire your flight. So print, I don't think, will ever die, and we have to keep those things.
And so it's up to us to keep that alive. Now, is there a subscription price for the Heritage Salon magazine?
No, there is not. It is absolutely free. If anyone is interested in subscribing, they just go to the website, and there at the magazine section tab, it gives you instructions, and you can actually send an email to subscribe at heritagesalon.com.
Wonderful. So what is in your future?
Right now, I am finishing up the next issue, and this issue is very exciting because I'll be highlighting institutions that people that are not don't think they exist, including the Great Plains Black History Museum and some others.
You mean that there are people that think that we don't exist? Wow.
Yes, yes. There are people that don't think there are black people in Nebraska.
We hear that all the time. And
it's
funny that you say that, because we appreciate the fact that you would love to highlight the Great Plains Black History Museum, and we are seeking to put that word out there that we do exist, that there are black people in Nebraska, and we are doing some awesome things.
Right. And I'm trying to tell this story of these untold institutions, because we're listening a lot about the new museum that's opening in D.C., the Smithsonian, of course, the major cities, Dallas and California. You got the museum in Detroit and Chicago, all over. But I want to tell the story of these institutions in Nebraska, and South Dakota, and Iowa, and Kansas, these institutions that we don't even know exist. So I'm doing a feature for those museums. I'm going to do some spotlights on some individuals and institutions, and I'm also going to introduce some new features in the magazine that I didn't do in the first issue, because the first issue was just a preview.
It was
so the next issue will.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The next issue will just be it'll be more true to what we're trying to do for the audience.
So the first issue was a sneak peek, but we will be
the first issue was a sneak peek.
We will be fully immersed when the second issue comes out, and that will be when, Jada?
That will be late fall, so probably mid to late October.
Okay, mid to late October. And as you mentioned, people don't realize that there are museums in the Midwest. And as people are going to California, going to Washington, going to Detroit, they pass through these cities that you're discussing and that will be featured in your next issue. And we look forward to seeing where those museums are, what those museums are, and what they hold for the public.
Right. And I want people to know that there are Black people in these states, and there are, museums and history that is there.
Yes.
So I'm working on that. I'm finishing up my second master's degree in museum studies, and I tell people I'm doing that so I can gain knowledge to share knowledge. And I'm also working on, soliciting more funding for the magazine. I'm doing some traveling. I'm gonna I'm gonna do a visit to you all there in Nebraska at the Great Plains Black History Museum. I have a couple of other engagements I'm working on, presenting at some conferences, and hopefully one day soon, upcoming. I just talked to my husband about this. I would love to write a book. Not sure what about. Probably museums and diversity, but hopefully can write a book and get this message out.
Well, it sounds like you are well on your way to getting that done. Now, you mentioned, of course, our museum. Tell me about some of the other museums that people probably don't know that they exist. I know there's an African American Museum of Iowa in Cedar Rapids. Yes, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Tell me some other cities.
Yes. South Dakota, I want to say it's Sioux Falls. I have to get the right city. But in South Dakota, they're starting an African American museum. They have a small area display at a facility, a cultural center, but they are really gearing up to open, full-fledged. Also, Kansas African American Museum. Great folks there. Mark McCormick is now the executive director, and great story that I'm going to talk about. One of the first organized sit-ins did not happen in Greensboro, North Carolina, but actually there in Kansas. So these are great stories that are going to come out of this. So South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa, really Iowa is one of probably, I think, the models for the museums in the Great Plains states, because they've been very successful with their programming. I think last I checked, their operating budget was close to $3 million, and they're flourishing. And they have a built-in audience. People are visiting. People are donating. Corporations and companies are donating, and they are doing unique programming that's not just in their facility, but they're traveling throughout the state to get more, and doing a lot of oral history. A lot of these institutions are doing a lot of oral history, meaning collecting and interviewing different individuals to capture history, which is great because a lot of our elders are passing away, and they possess so much of our history, and we have to capture that some type of way. So a lot of these institutions are starting to do oral history, which is a great way to, to capture it.
And, oral history has always been important in our culture, and as a museum, of course, we want to capture that oral history, but I want to admonish our listeners that with all this technology that we have, while you are sitting there listening to grandmother's story for the 20th time, instead of, grandma's telling that story again, someone needs to get that iPad out, get out that iPhone, get out the Android, or get out the tablet and record what grandma is saying, because that is history. And you know what? You don't know where you're going. You can't tell where you're going if you don't know where you've been.
Right. And it's so important that we listen to our elders. They possess so much knowledge. Right now, with me putting together some things with our church, I'm going to have to do a lot of oral history collections because I don't know. Some research I did when I was at Michigan State University, I located the Malcolm X home site. where he grew up in Lansing, Michigan, and decided that I wanted to work on redeveloping that site. Well, I didn't know this, but he has a lot of family and childhood friends in around Lansing, Michigan, where I was. Well, lo and behold, I was able to connect with his sister, Yvonne Little, who, before she passed away, allowed me to come and meet with her, and I actually was able to interview her and had some oral history. I wanted to be able to, at the time I wanted to redevelop the site and put a replica of their childhood home on the site, and I would not have been able to capture what was in the home if I never sat down and recorded her speaking. So I was able to collect that. Lo and behold, I wasn't able to actually redevelop the site, but I was able to capture some of her, her thoughts about her brother, thoughts about the home, and just a great way to listen to her and tell her story.
I want to bring you full circle. Omaha is actually the birthplace of Malcolm X. So when you come to visit, since you've been at his home site where he grew up, you must come and visit the birth site, and then you'll have just an awesome story. You can go from the beginning to the end.
Great. So that definitely needs to be on the plan when I come.
Yes, we will put that on your touring schedule. Tell me some of the other oral histories that you've collected and how that has impacted what you're doing now.
Oral history I've done with Malcolm X's sister. I've done some oral collection with my grandmother. I call her and say, Grandma, tell me this story, or, tell me that. And I was reminded today about how much this history kind of runs in my blood. I remember as I'm collecting history from my current church, my church I grew up in when I was a little girl, my grandmother is still there. I remembered how we actually put together an exhibit when they were celebrating their anniversary. And my grandmother put together an exhibit when I was a little girl. I could have been no more than 9 or 10 years old. So this has always been, kind of in my blood, So my grandmother has a lot of history. 83. And she remembers a lot. She remembers when she was a little girl living in Charlotte and traveling, and Jacksonville, Florida, where I grew up. So I tell people, your grandparents, you need to listen to them. Or if you're just volunteering at a retirement home, you don't know who you're running into. So my grandmother, I've talked to and interviewed. Malcolm X's sister. I did some oral collections with some of Malcolm X's childhood friends, actually some siblings. He was in foster homes in Lansing, and some of the families that he lived with, I was able to speak with the kids, when they were adults now, they're older, that he lived with. So it was great because I got an opportunity to learn. Everyone knows Malcolm X was this militant man, and, he was a Muslim, and he was his leader. But you get a chance to hear about this little boy who grew up and, who had fun and played, and, he was a kid, too. So it's always been fascinating to me to hear stories, and that was great. That was really great.
Now, I want to back up a little bit. When you are collecting your oral histories, is that by video? Are you taping that with an audio device? Or are you writing? How do you collect that?
I typically do audio. I've never done video, but video is really good. And there's actually an organization out of Chicago called the History Makers, and they actually do video recording. I'm not really sure about audio, but I know video recording they do as well. If you're just someone that's doing it regular, you can definitely visit your local Staples or Office Max, any store, and get a just small recorder and get some cassettes and, record, the conversation you're having. But, I use I love pencils and paper, but I usually have a notebook, a pencil, and a small recorder, and I do my recording that way.
So you are actually writing and recording, and then do you go back and listen to it to determine what you may have missed writing?
Yes, Yes, I do. And I try to get someone to transcribe it as well. And you can typically go to your local university or college, even your community college, and they typically have students or someone that can transcribe your tape for you.
You're giving me ideas, Jada. This is dangerous. You're giving me ideas. Now, I've heard you talk about all that you do. Do you have a staff? Are you a one-woman band? Explain that to me, please.
It is a one-woman band. It is me running Facebook. Well, I have someone that's working, that's doing some social media. She's doing my Facebook for Heritage Salon, and I really use my own personal Facebook truly for the magazine. I just got back on because I have so many friends from college and, high school and all over from my travel, and I connect with them there. So I have someone doing a little bit of stuff, updates on Facebook, but for the most part, it's really me. I'm doing all the writing. I do have some people that are contributing this issue, but all the writing, I have a design team out of Detroit, Michigan, and printers out of Detroit, Michigan that puts all the layout and design together because I'm just not creative like that. But typically all of the features, the content is the writing that I'm doing. I have someone assisting me with some grants, but for the most part, it's pretty much Jada doing the marketing and the social media and the phone calls and the mailing. When I did the first mailing, I mailed almost 200 magazines out, and I'll never forget standing in the post office putting stamps on almost 200 envelopes.
Wow.
To get it out. So but it was a labor of love because it was like giving birth to a baby. I have 2 children, so I tell people I birthed another baby when I sent out that magazine.
Yes, yes, you did. And we are so glad that you were in the delivery room. That's how we came to know you. You sent a copy of Heritage Salon to our president, Jim Beatty, and right away he said, we need to connect with you, and we did. And here we are. Mm-hmm. On the chat with the Great Plains Black History Museum. I have to commend you because you are I'll call it a Twitter diva. There is not a tweet. If I put out something at Heritage Salon, you have joined it to 50 other people. And it is important that we realize the power of the social media. It's not just about young people and talking about what they ate and what they did. There is a whole there is a whole line of museums that are out there that are on Twitter. A whole line of African American museums that are on Twitter, and that's how we share information.
Absolutely. Honestly, before, because I'm not a fan of Facebook at all. It's just not my thing. I really love Twitter. And before I just, went back to Facebook, honestly, I only did Twitter when I tweeting. When I took the magazine out, I got the word out through Twitter. I connected with the museums because of Twitter. I really, Twitter to me reaches more people. It's quick, it's easy. And I get an opportunity to, get the word out. And it can go, to me, Twitter goes really fast. Because one person could retweet to their followers and you could get, if someone has, 10, 15,000 followers and they retweet, you could liable to pick up, 100 followers. So to me, you reach more people with Twitter. Whereas with Facebook, I still have to post it, and my friends have to share it, and everybody's not on it at the same time. And to me, it's a bit, it seems to be longer. But with Twitter, to me, it's quick, it's easy. Someone gets the right tweet, and it can change everything for you.
Okay, so I'm going to get to tweeting.
Okay.
And the Great Plains Black History Museum, we are at GP Black Museum is our Twitter handle, and yours is at Heritage Salon. That is your Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the other museums that you correspond with via Twitter.
A lot of correspondence with the National Museum of African American History and Culture in D.C., quite a bit. Disabled Museum, I have to commend them. They do a lot of tweeting. They're doing really good with that. And I push these museums to tweet because that's a perfect way for people to learn about you. I do quite a bit of tweeting with them. You guys are on the Iowa Museum tweets quite a bit. But everyone is different. They tend to tweet at different times. I typically try and do a couple tweets a day, a few, and then definitely on Fridays, I try and tell people to follow others. You know, they do the pound, the hashtag FF Follow Friday. So I try and put the word out about different institutions. I do quite a bit with the Harvey Gantt Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Freedom Center, I do some interaction with them in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been doing quite a bit with the Boston, the Museum of African American History of Boston and Nantucket. So there are quite a few, and then people can learn about these institutions, you know, by going on online and learning about them. And I also do another museum is the A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum, which is located in Chicago, actually. I follow them. They follow me. They tend to retweet my tweets. And sometimes it surprises me because some people I tweet and they don't say anything, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're starting. So there are quite a bit of museums that are out there, and everyone can't, you know, they're just not on and they just don't have lots of people. But I tell people, find you a college student or a young person that knows Twitter and knows Facebook and have them work on your social media because they know it. I mean, they know it more than, you know, than I know it, and I'm 35 years old. But I definitely tell museums, find a young person, find someone that can engage, you know, individuals with, you know, with your institutions on these social media outlets because, again, this stuff is free. You can't pay to reach possibly billions of people, you know, from marketing. It's free marketing.
You're right. It is free marketing. And we need not be stuck in the mud because we are seasoned, I will say, that we can't tweet, that I know Facebook is all the rage and Facebook is kind of personal, but if you can get your thought into 140 characters, you're awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's a limit.
And
brevity.
Sometimes it takes longer. It takes more, and I'll do a part 2 tweet, but I like to be simple, short, sweet, you know, kind of saying and jump off.
Okay. So Twitter it is. I'm going to get on that where the Great Plains Black History Museum is concerned, and we're going to do more tweeting. It has been encouraging to talk to you. It has been enlightening to talk with you about your experiences, the fact that print is not dead. We need not let it die. It was a long time before we were allowed to read and write, so we should not abandon that for the social sites and the more, I call it immediate actions and reactions that we get by using a computer. You know, you have mentioned that it is important to keep magazines, it's important to keep books, it's important to keep articles, artifacts. That's what museums are made of. Someone saved something so that we could have it. And so we need not be hasty in not going after those artifacts and not going after those books. Now, you mentioned that you are studying on your second master's. And I'm a futurist. So in 5 years, where do you envision yourself?
5 years, I envision myself doing a lot more traveling, speaking at conferences and different institutions, talking about diversity, and not just African American museums, because I've recently, and I've always known this, I set out this track because of the lack of diversity in museums, of audiences, of patrons, of donors, of museum professionals. And I realized that Heritage Salon is an avenue to diversify this field. My real goal is to trailblaze in this field and diversify it. So when I look up in another 10, 15 years, there are even more African Americans, Latinos, Indians. There are more people in the museum field. So in 5 years, I see myself doing more traveling, getting this message out. Definitely have written a book by that time, and working, towards getting even more things done and accomplished to diversify this field.
And you say diversify, and you have noted that it's not just about African Americans or black museums. It's about all museums and spreading the word to the majority museums as well as the minority museums.
Right.
And I think that you have shed some light on where there are museums that we don't necessarily know about, but they do exist, and they have viable information that everyone is interested in.
Right.
You have mentioned Florida. You've mentioned Michigan. Have you been to the museums that are in California or in the western part of our United States?
I have not, and that is a goal in the next year or so, or next couple of years, is to get to the museum in California, the large museum there, to also get to some more museums out where you all are and out west. I've done quite a bit of East Coast and Southern traveling, and I plan to do more. And one of the things I want to do when I retire one day is to, my husband wants to get an RV, which I used to say, you're crazy, why would we get an RV? He wants to get an RV and just drive around the country. But it's perfect because I will be able to visit a lot of museums I haven't been able to. But one other thing I want to do is actually get in a car and do like a civil rights trail through all the civil rights sites and historic sites and museums all throughout Memphis and Alabama, and so many things happen in these different, these different states. So definitely want to get out west because that's not an area that I've actually never been out west, but I'm hoping to get to some museums in Seattle in May, and also in the next couple of years in California.
So that sounds like another book on the way, traveling the Civil Rights Trail by car.
Yes.
And who knows, that's an
Yes.
app in the making. I know we're not going to
Yes.
be technical, but that is certainly something that people would be interested in in this instant age that we have. Any parting words for our audience that you would like to share?
Just to pursue your dream and your passion. I was watching a Today Show this morning, and I saw this woman. I don't know if anyone saw this, but I think she's in her 60s or 70s, and she had been trying several times to cross from Canada to, I'm sorry, not Canada, but from Cuba to Florida by swimming.
Oh, yes.
And the one thing that she wanted everyone to know was to never give up. And she's like, here I am in my age, and I never gave up this dream. So I tell people, you can't give up that passion that you have, that dream that you have, no matter how big or how small, whatever it is, you have to pursue it. And for me, the moment I realized that museums and diversifying the museum field and my passion was this, I knew it when all I could think about was that all I could do was when I drove, I thought about it. When I got up in the morning, I thought about it. When I was in the bathroom, I thought about it, and I knew that I had to pursue this. And another pivotal moment was when I was in undergrad at Bethune-Cookman. I was able to give a tour to a couple that was doing some research on Dr. Bethune's home. I did it in 1997, 98. And I didn't think anything of it. I was, young in school. I just thought it was a tour that I gave. And when I did research on different historical homes, once I got to Michigan State in 2003, I located this book that had all the historical homes that I was visiting and Dr. Bethune's home. Well, I decided to go back to my hotel and start to read the book. And when I read the book and read the acknowledgement page, I found my name as being one of the persons that helped assist in that book. So for me, it came full circle. Here it is 5, 6, 7 years later, and I've stumbled back across something where I assisted these people, in this research, and now here I am with my name listed in the book as being part of the, research. So that moment and other moments just made me realize I have to pursue this. And I don't regret any moment, at any point, any second, even the late nights, because I told you I'm a night writer. I write between the hours of 10 and like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I enjoy every moment of it. And when you find a thing that you love and you have the passion for, you have to pursue it. You have to find that thing. So never give up. And you have to follow your dreams and that passion that you have to follow it. You have to do it.
You have a vision that gives others vision, that gives others information, that gives others hope, that just gives. I mean, I've not met you in person, but we've talked several times on the phone, and you have a magnetic personality, and you have a giving spirit, and you have that writing spirit, as you say, and just continue, keep that word going. We look forward to the next issue of Heritage Salon. We will certainly, I think we have a link on our website to your website, but as the digital version comes out, we will certainly put that up on our website and encourage our readers to take a look at it. We will be scheduling you in the future for a trip to Omaha.
Yes.
We look forward to you being a part of our lecture series here in Omaha, and to maybe meet up with you somewhere on the road so that we can share that vision that you have with you, and maybe just follow in your footsteps or trail along behind or carry your bags or something so that we can be a part of that, because it is just so important, the networking, the connecting, and every day there is something new unfolding. You talk about books, you talk about the physical things that make up our history, and we are letting that slip away because young people have chosen to take different avenues, and so they're not really interested in sitting down and reading or giving a tour. Yes, there are some people that are, but we need to do more of that. We need to ground ourselves and get still, and which you have certainly done. And you are evidence of that, and you are an encouragement to that. So just from my little part of the world, keep going. Don't stop.
Well, thank you so much. And truly, the institutions like your institution and others inspire me. I'm doing this because of you all. I am truly pushing this message out so that people know about you all and people are learning about these different institutions. But I'm totally inspired by you all, inspired by looking at my children, inspired by just life and getting the word out there. And I have to give glory to God, because without Him, I know that none of this would be possible.
Amen.
So
Amen.
I thank you. I'm very humbled. I appreciate you all. I'm very excited about coming to Omaha. I'm in Texas now, and I am a Florida girl, so I'm going to have to find a coat when I come.
We'll try not to invite you when it's cold.
Okay.
We don't want you to get snowed in. That happens.
Okay.
But, but it is very, as I said before, my favorite word, I guess, is wow. And when I looked at your magazine, I said, wow. When I talked to you the first time earlier this summer, I was like, wow. And now, after interviewing you here on 1690 AM The One, I got to say it again, wow. You are doing phenomenal and great things there in Texas. You've done great things in Florida. You've done great things in Michigan. It seems like wherever the sole of your feet touch, and I know you know what that means biblically, is yours.
Yes. Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it and humbled, and it's really to God be the glory. I really am excited about this journey that I'm taking, and excited to see what's next.
All right, Jada. Well, thank you, and have a
Thank
wonderful evening.
you. You too, and thank you to all your listeners for listening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
A chat with the Great Plains Black History Museum originates here in Omaha, Nebraska. But as you have witnessed in the last couple of weeks, we've talked to someone in Maryland, and now we've talked to someone in Texas, and we are going to continue to talk around the country to people that have something that our audience and our listeners are interested in, or a way to, as we say with the Great Plains Black History Museum, to preserve, to celebrate, and to educate. That's what we are here to do. That's what this broadcast is about. And we want to carry that message wherever it will go. This is not just local to our community, but this is worldwide. The originator of this station, Mr. William King, and his partners, they have shown me the demographics. There are people overseas that hear this. And so you never know who you're entertaining unawares. And I invite you to email me. That is Terry, Terri, Sanders, Sanders, at gpblackmuseum.org. Please go to our website at www.gpblackmuseum.org. Follow us on Twitter. We just heard Jada say it. That's the place to be. And we are at GP Black Museum. Follow us on Facebook, Great Plains Black History Museum. And just follow us. We invite you to join the museum. You can do that on our website. We have links there where you can become a member. Our memberships are $10 for senior citizens, anyone 65 and over, $10 for students, $20 for an individual membership, $40 for a family membership, $100 for a business membership, and $500 for a lifetime membership to the Great Plains Black History Museum. Your membership is important to us because with your membership, you help us to further the message of preserving, celebrating, and educating all persons about the African American experience on the Great Plains and the African American influence in our world. So I would like to thank you for this evening. Thank you for listening. I would like to thank our guest, Jada Wright Green of the Heritage Salon. And again, I'll hold up that magazine, so if you see this someplace, pick it up. She'll be coming out with more. Heritage Salon, this was her inaugural issue. Her second issue, Great Plains Black History Museum, will be one of her feature museums. Yes, there are black people in Nebraska, and there are definitely some in Omaha, and I am not just a person in the wilderness, but I have lots of brothers and sisters behind me in this area. So we invite you to join us again next week. We're full of surprises here on Chat with the Great Plains Black History Museum, and we'd like to thank Mr. William King of 1690amthe1.com for providing this platform. And with that, I bid you adieu and good evening.